Hey everybody, welcome to The Process. I'm Chris, and this is a very special episode of Ask Me Anything. I'm here with Keir McLaren. People call him consultant, I call him coach, mentor, and friend. And we're gonna dive deep into what he does, what he's done for me. And we're doing something very different today. We're going live via the internet, via Fuse. So we have a couple of people there who can tune in and ask questions, and we have a live audience. So stick around. Let me try this again.
I want you guys to listen to me.
Yeah.
I design sandwiches. My name is Jose Caballero, and I talk about the business of design. I talk about a lot of stuff.
My name is Chris Doe, and I talk about the business of design.
At the center of this operating system, it's about understanding.
Jose, can we just tell them what the show title is?
I hate you, dude.
You are watching The Process. Thank you. Hey, all right, just in time, you guys. Have a seat. I guess punctuality was not in the business seminar. First, I'd like to share with people, it's Keir McLaren. Can we cut to Keir and throw up his lower third, Aaron? Can you get that up so that in case you want to get in touch with Keir, there he is. I call him business coach, but apparently you prefer the term consultant.
I do.
Okay, so my bad there. And you can reach Keir through clarity.fm/Keir McLaren. All right, enough about that. So let me tell you a little bit about how we met. I've been working with Keir as a consultant for over 10 years now. And it was over lunch that I was having with a friend that he told me about this new thing that was happening in his business and how he had been working with this consultant and had grown his business by 200% in revenue. And I'm not stupid. I got the information and I contacted Keir right away. And that's how we began our relationship. And since then, on the very first day of our meeting, I got valuable advice from Keir, and he saved me from making a catastrophic business decision. It was going to be fatal. And so that's in our very first meeting. So people talk, and we've done this before, we talk a lot about value. In that 20 or 30 minutes of just talking to me, he probably saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars and a lot of frustration and aggravation. Now let's talk about the positive, because that's a negative. The positive is we were in this stage where we could not get past a glass ceiling. And we were doing revenue of around $2.4 million. And true to this kind of too good to be true promise, Keir helped me almost double our billing. So in that very first year that we worked together, we went from 2.4 to $4 million, and we've never looked back. So I owe a lot to this man. So I'm going to turn it over to Keir. Keir, can we talk a little bit about the people that you work with, entrepreneurs?
Sure. Yeah, obviously I work mostly I've worked in all sorts of businesses. I had an ad agency at one time back east, a small one. But today I work pretty much in the motion graphics. I've worked in the music business. I have a client who makes documentaries. What happens with entrepreneurs, particularly artists, is they come out of art school and they know a lot about art and they don't know much about business. And just through sheer talent and hard work and willpower, they build their business to a certain point. And I think that's what Chris and Jessie, his wife, who's his business partner, did. Then they get to a point where they realize that they don't know anything about business, and the very things that got them there, the willfulness, the determination, the working lots of hours, are now working against them, against their growth. The way I used to, this occurred to me, the way I used to get all my businesses, somebody's spouse would be at a cocktail party and say, I'm going to leave such and such because he or she's never home. And they would say, you know, my husband hired a guy you ought to talk to, because one of the things I try to help people with is having some sort of balance. I'm not really interested, and I don't work with people who simply want to make money, because making money, to be honest with you, is not that hard. Making money and having a life and having it mean something, that part's pretty hard.
Well, for some people here in the audience, making money is hard too.
Yeah,
but you're right.
And there's some reasons for that.
Okay.
I mean, there's some reasons if you have the talent and you're willing to work. And the thing most people aren't willing to do, myself included, is to change. A lot of times people pay me very well, and for the first 6 months, every meeting is the same. I make a suggestion, they tell me why they can't do that. And I'm sort of like your college professor. Like, I get paid whether you take my advice or not. I don't, you know, it's really up to you. My job is to show up. So it usually takes people a while. If you're not willing to change, then nobody can help you. I'm going to show you this book, and I'll somehow make it available. This guy won the Nobel Prize. He's actually a psychologist. And what he was interested in was how can so many smart people on Wall Street make so many stupid decisions? Because they're the best of the best. And basically what they know in psychology, and I suggest all of you know as much about this as you can, is that most of us are always on what they call system one. We're making automatic decisions that we think are well thought out. And then there's a famous experiment where they say, true or false, Moses led the animals 2 by 2 onto the ark. An overwhelmingly number of people, I've sort of prompted you that it's a trick, will answer that that's true. Now, if you think about it, it's actually Noah, not Moses. But people will always defer to the easiest way out. They don't want to really use their brains, the other part of their brain, because it takes an awful lot of energy. So change is enormously difficult for all of us. What I try to do is help people have confidence. You know, it's like, how bad can you fail? I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen?
If you're not ready to change, I'm going to save you some money. Don't hire a coach. And when you're ready to do what needs to be done, there's a Stephen Covey quote about this. If you want to keep getting the same results, keep doing the same thing. I probably butchered that, but it's that sentiment, right?
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about then maybe that first conversation that you have with entrepreneurs who may call you up on the phone. What do you guys talk about?
Well, the first thing that there's some things that I need to know. If you hire me, I probably will end up knowing more about you than your therapist and your partner, because you have to tell the truth. If you can't tell the truth, I can't help you. I want to know what you know about your business. So the first thing I usually ask is, do you have a P&L? And a lot of people I've asked that have made millions of dollars actually don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, my degree's in political science with graduate work in international affairs, so I don't pretend to be a CPA or a lawyer. But you have to have a P&L, and it can be on a legal pad, I don't care. You have to kind of have a general way to know how to read it, or else you have no idea what you're doing financially. And a lot of these decisions that you're going to be making about your business are going to be grounded in some understanding of how your business operates financially. The other thing, particularly in motion graphics and the kind of businesses that I am most active in right now, is do you actualize jobs? And what that means is, do you track your, say you sold a $100,000 TV commercial, do you know how much you spent to make that commercial? Did you track your money so that you know what your profit is? And I guess this is as good a time as any, Chris, to talk about profit.
Gross profit, net profit. A lot of people make this mistake, and they think, like, how much money did you make? That's a general question. Right. How much money did you make? And they tell you what they gross. That's not even gross profit.
The difference between talking to artists and people like yourselves and talking to businessmen, they don't care what the gross sale is. All they care is what the net sale is. Most people will say, Microsoft called, and you say, well, how much is the job? $400,000. Oh, everybody's excited. I say, well, how much are we going to make on that? Total silence. Nobody really knows. If you don't know that, you don't know whether you can take the job. As Chris has learned, a lot of times you can take a $50,000 job and make far more money as a percentage than a $500,000 job. And you have to kind of know those numbers so that if you're Chris or you guys, you know which decision to make. It's this idea that I'll take this job for no money because then the guy will come back and give me more money. That's never going to happen. It never happens. Underline that. It never happens. Okay? You can't go to a car dealer and say, well, look, you want $10,000 for that car, but I'll pay you $5,000, and then my next car I'll come back and I'll buy it from you. He's not going to listen to you.
So we've all probably heard something like that, probably taken one of those things, or more than one.
We've all done it.
Right?
I've done it. Okay? I used to have an ad business. I know how it works. Don't do that to yourselves. You're kidding yourselves. You're really kidding yourselves. So
the promise of work tomorrow for bills that need to be paid today, it's the bait that traps you. And sometimes we tell that lie to ourselves. We say, like, this is a very promising thing. This is a relationship, when the client's never indicated anything close to that. Okay.
Well, the other thing is we don't listen very well. Okay. None of us are very good listeners. if you listen closely, the client's really telling you what kind of client they're going to be. Okay, so one of the things you need to decide is, how much pain and suffering is there going to be involved in this? If I get recommended to a client where there's something about it I want to do, but I know there's pain and suffering, I literally double the money. Because that's the only thing. I've quit doing that because even that doesn't make the pain go away. But, clients will tell you, and if they won't tell you certain things, then they're there's every encounter with a client is information. But people are listening for what they want to hear. Clients who are evasive, who don't know, who will get back to you, it's legitimate to say, are you the decision maker? Because most of the people you work with, they're not the decision maker. They're going to have to sell you to somebody above them, and we can talk about how you do that.
So that's a term that you're talking about that marketing people or salespeople call happy ears. You hear what you want to hear. So even though they're not talking about any real work in the near future and they're not the decision maker, you think they're talking about work that's coming to you in 30 days. So you're just kind of deluding yourself at that point.
Yeah, there's sort of a joke about this. It's like, what's the worst answer you can get on a sales call? Yes, no, or maybe. And the answer is maybe. And the reason it's maybe is because it wastes your time. Okay, you spend a lot of time, you're calling these people, depending on how you market yourselves. If you have a no, you move on. If you have a yes, you get the work. Maybe is the worst. It's really the worst.
Well, maybe I can jump in there on that maybe and say that a lot of creative types are even afraid to ask, don't know how to ask, so they're just prolonging the question and telling themselves maybe. So Kier, can we talk a little bit about that funnel of the conversation about having goals?
When I was a kid, that's a while ago, they used to run these old black and white cowboy movies on Saturday morning, and they were always about, driving the cattle across the plains to the railhead and then driving them into that chute onto the cars. And I think I thought about this more. I think that's a good metaphor because this is what you're doing. You're caring for your business. You're taking care of your business. That's the analogy of driving these cattle. And then you get them there. You've got to drive them onto that chute. You know how it goes? It's like that, to get them one by one to get on there. And the only way you get paid is when the cattle car gets to Kansas City or wherever it gets to and they sell the cattle. This is the most frustrating thing I've ever encountered in my work. People somehow think it's like you're Willy Loman. Does anyone here know who Willy Loman is? Death of a Salesman, a famous play by Henry Miller. And unfortunately, when all of us think of salesmen, we think of the guy who's selling us a car, the guy who's calling us on the phone 300 times a day, or Willy Loman, the sort of failed guy carrying, let me give you a hint. You're here today because you think you can learn something to help you with business. If I have lunch with you, I'm there because I think you have business and I think maybe I can get it. When you talk to somebody on the phone in this industry, they're so busy, they have some interest in you. They know you're not their new best friend, okay? You're not friends. This is business. You can be a friend. Chris and I have become friends over the years, but so your job, every meeting that you go to, and you have to have a goal. What is the goal of the meeting? A client of mine just met with someone very famous and was there with another person. The other person wanted to do, hey, it's a let's get to know each other meeting. My client has learned, he knew it was a goal meeting. This person looked at the other guy and said, well, what's your purpose for being here? And the guy went into the well, and then my guy said, I have a goal and here's what it is. My guy got the deal, okay? Important, smart people understand this. If you think that you're gonna call, like, here's what I like, meet and greet. What the hell does that mean, meet and greet? I don't have time, I don't know if about you, I don't have time for meet and greet. I have time to talk about business, real business, how I can help you. Are you the kind of person I want to work with? And I think most of us are like that. And what I tell people is think about yourselves. When you're the customer, who are you? Do you want to talk on the phone for 20 minutes to a telemarketer? I don't see a raise. I don't see no hands. So the people you're talking to are the same way. They're having a meeting with you for a particular reason. Your job's to figure out what the reason is. Most of these people have 2, 3, 4, 500. I've had clients that have so many emails, they have someone who vets their emails. So people's time is enormously important. Don't waste it. Did any of you ever watch The Real Housewives of Orange County? When it first came on, I was a big fan. I love junk TV. There was this character named Slade. His name was Slade Smiley. Someone's
Is that his real name?
That was his name.
Wow.
And he had this girlfriend named Jo who tried to be a singer. And the client that Chris is talking about, she actually later came and recorded a song. The girl couldn't sing a lick. But that's him. But so he wants to sell this big financial package that was based in Casa Dakota. So he finally gets a meeting. It takes him a year to get a meeting. And then he goes into the guy's office is as big as half of Chris Doe's main room there. It's gigantic. I never saw an office this big. And the guy's at the desk and he's on the phone. And he sit down, sit down, sit down. So finally he hangs off the phone and he goes, okay, what can you do for me? And Slade Smiley started the meet and greet. He says, you waited a year to get in here and you don't have anything more than that to say? Get out, you're wasting my time. That's the reality of business.
Is there a moment that you've had when you're meeting with somebody that you think is a potential client, but you're afraid to ask, or there's some other kind of barrier that you just didn't get to it, so then the meeting fizzled out and you walked away thinking, I'm gonna have to have another meeting? Has that happened to you guys? I know it's happened to me until Kyr's explained this concept to me.
Yeah, I can tell you why that is, okay? Because you didn't set it up to ask the questions. If you talked about the kids, the Lakers and stuff like that, you're sort of like jumping off a cliff there at the end. The whole thing should be geared, and that's why you need to have a goal. You shouldn't be asking any questions or talking about things that don't have to do with whatever your final ask is going to be. That's why it's so difficult, okay?
Isn't it a little bit of a balance, though?
Between what?
Well, just in terms of people want to also work with who they like working with.
Absolutely.
So a little bit of, not going into, hey, how are the kids?
I don't think
that,
it's an either-or proposition.
Maybe it's just more of like the approach of how you.
Yeah, and I think that
Take
gets
out
to the ask, because if we look at the websites of those of you that are in the graphics business, I can tell you what they all say. You're very creative, you're storytellers, you're great to work with, you're honest, you're like, if Jesus came back, he'd be your best buddy, you're perfect. Well, the way you show that you're a professional and the method with which you work is how you ask questions and the questions you ask. That's what demonstrates your expertise, not saying you're an expert. Chris has asked me to do this kind of thing for years, and I've always resisted because I have a real problem with people who pose as experts. Okay? I don't think any of us know that much. If anything I say to any of you today, either here or on the internet, helps your business, great. But, a lot of it's not going to work for you. And that's okay. So, how you talk to people and what you say about yourself, this is what demonstrates that you're a pro. Okay? So I agree with you. I don't think one's exclusive. What's bad is when what you're talking about has absolutely nothing to do with business.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Because I want to share with you guys what Kyr has helped me to do, and I have some of the same hang-ups I think that you guys have, and taking it back to the death of the salesman. I think we have this image of what a salesperson does. It's very aggressive, and it's a big turnoff. It's one of the more despised, like a car salesman, the stereotypical car salesman. And so if we ask, we feel like we're that person, and we don't want to be that person because we're sensitive and very empathetic. What Kyr taught me was you can ask and not be crass or rude about it, and there's a way to do it. So that's about ability of language and being transparent. So here's the thing is I have these encounters quite often where somebody wants to have a meeting with me. Now I just ask them, what do you want, before I even have the meeting? And they still won't tell me. It takes like 3 times before they'll tell me, so I can make a decision should I go and meet them. And oftentimes, say somebody approaches me after an event or something, I know they want to ask me something like, can I work for you? Is it an internship opportunity? But they don't get to it. And then the person that it does gets the opportunity.
Yeah, I would like to say something else too that might be helpful. You know, I'm pretty transparent. I've gone to a lot of therapy and a lot of Al-Anon meetings.
Okay, it's coming out now. It's coming out. Here we go.
But one of the things you learn there is what's called stay out of the results. What you owe yourself in a meeting is to walk out of that meeting saying that you presented yourself and your company in the best way. You have no control over the outcome, none. There's a great a movie you can probably just find on, it's called My Date with Drew. It's about this guy who's trying to get this date with Drew Barrymore, and they go and they rent this camera because Best Buy at the time has a deal where if it doesn't, you can take it back in 30 days and not pay for it. And they have all these machinations like you have here in Hollywood. Who do you know? How can I get the contact? And she never calls back. So of course they're imagining. The whole movie's about what's happening. And then in the end, she actually has the date with the guy and she says, you know, I just got your tape, your thing 3 days ago because I've been traveling all over the world and it's been chasing me. So don't try to imagine why you didn't get the job. You can't control that. What you can control is you ask yourself, did I do the best I could to present my company and what we have to offer? That's it. That's what you owe. Stay out of the results.
Great. Go ahead.
So whenever you have these agreements, how important is it to get everything in writing? Like, and how soon do you try to get things in writing to make sure that you both have the same goals and objectives?
Well, you want to get something, you know, before you do any work. Okay? Before you do any work, have money and have some sort of deal in place. And in every business, that can be, you know, if it's someone you know, it's a handshake. If it's someone you don't know, I mean, it can be a 100-page legal document, you know. Chris and I have a deal for something we're doing in China, and because of the nature of that, we have a 4-paragraph thing because we know we can't enforce it. We believe the people we're working with are people that Chris knows and that they're honest people. We have no way to know that. So it depends on, you know, the nature of the deal.
Thanks, Rose, for asking that question. I have a bunch of things here, topics that Kira and I have worked on ahead of time, but the whole point of this is to make it interactive. So if there's something that's hitting home with you right now, some issue that you're trying to figure out, this is a great time to ask it. So you guys have anything, just shout it out. Anybody? Rocio?
Yeah.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Couple.
All right.
Well, I'm definitely interested in the idea of being more purposeful with those meetings. And the question is, you know, somebody approaches us and there's some like email interaction first and then, okay, great, we'll set up a call. Is it good to try to, you know, usually we'll send like an agenda, what we want to do for the call. But it just depends. Sometimes you don't get any information from them. Sometimes you
Right.
get a little bit more. So how do you manage that before you actually have
I try
the
to do a little research, like in the businesses. Like LinkedIn is a really good source of that.
Right.
And I try to find out why they're calling. And if they won't tell me, I try to figure it out. But I'm not afraid to ask either.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably part of it.
Kira, don't you just say, I'm just curious why you reached out?
What I say is, what made you call, basically? What was it that Chris or you saw on the internet or you saw on my LinkedIn? What was it that interested you? Because then I can hone down on what part, you know, of,
Right.
you know, I don't know if that's helpful in
Yeah.
in your business or not. I'd like to tell you a couple other things that I think are helpful. You need to have what I call a re-tellable story, because a lot of times the people that you're talking to aren't the decision makers. They're going to have to sell you. So you have to give them something to sell. So I was thinking about this, so I'm going to tell a re-tellable story about myself. Maybe you can use that to help sell me. So I used to work in the inner city. I used to work for the Job Corps in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And I inherited a staff. I had like 30-some people. 5 of them were ex-convicts. I had a bank robber, a guy convicted of raping 65 women, a guy murder 1, another guy rape, and a guy selling heroin. You can imagine maybe what the staff meetings were like. So, and everyone that I had we had 200 16 to 22-year-old inner city, you know, tough white kids. I mean, I spent most of my time at public safety #1 in Pittsburgh, which is where they arraign criminals, because my kids were the ones who mugged your mom, they were mine. The ones who stole your car, they were mine. So I learned how to manage in that setting. I learned how to motivate staff. I learned how to deal with 200 kids that try to keep them, you know, from killing themselves or killing one of you. I know how to work with people. I don't care how different you are. So when you call me and say, "Oh gosh, you know, my creative director," I go, "Dude, as long as he's not armed, I think I can help you."
Hey, aren't some of them armed too?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have one that's armed, actually. Right. But you know, so that's not the greatest retellable story. But you need to have something that demonstrates your ability. What I'm trying to demonstrate to you in a brief way is, I know how to handle people. I know how to deal with bunches of people. I don't care who you are, what your background is, your ethnicity, your religion. It doesn't matter to me. You know, you have to have a story like that.
You are watching The Process.